Hi, I'm Hannah. And I'm going to start off with a question, and I actually do want you guys to raise your hand, so don't leave me alone. How many of you, whenever you were in middle school or high school, ever remember driving your parents crazy when it was time to go school shopping for new clothes, or even yourselves when you were figuring out your outfit of the day? Anybody? Okay, about half. Okay. Well, either way, at that point in our lives, we can all say that clothes were important to all of us, and they affected the way other people viewed us. Clothes were so important, they maybe got a little bit too important, which is why my proposition is that school uniforms have significant advantages on students in grade school. And my claims to back that up are: 1, they improve the overall environment of the campus; 2, they instill discipline in the students; and 3, they reduce causes for discrimination. So I'm going to start off with my first claim, that it improves the overall environment of the campus. Students that wear uniforms generally, they do better, they perform better. Without the distractions of clothing, you have to focus on something, so you focus on your work. And they also make students feel safe. It's very easy to detect if someone doesn't belong when everyone looks one way. And actually, the NCES, which stands for National Center for Education Stats, which is a website run by the U.S. Department of Education, they show in their statistics that 18.9% of schools in the U.S. have enforced uniforms as a safety and security measure since 2009, which is a much higher percentage than the schools that use the drug testing or the zero tolerance policy. And my second claim is that they instill discipline in the students. It prepares them for work dress codes, because no matter where you work, there's going to be some sort of dress code. And so if you wear uniforms in grade school, you're going to be already used to abiding by those type of rules. And I guess a lot of the schools in the U.S. have already caught on to that, because before 2000, only 12% of the schools in the nation used uniforms. And every year since 2000, it's been growing, and now more than 20% of schools use them. It also teaches them the differences between how to dress for an interview and what's casual, so it sets them above other students when they're going out into the work world. My third claim is it reduces causes for discrimination. It's not going to erase all discrimination, it's just tackling one issue. But it does it simply by erasing social and economical differences. If everyone looks the same, no one can feel pressured because they don't look a certain way, and uniforms are fairly affordable. The average parent spends about $240 a year on them, including repairs, and this is like shoes and everything. And a lot of schools actually have recycling programs for students that when you have, at the end of the year, uniforms in mint condition, you can just recycle them to the schools, and that way students who may not be able to afford them for the new year can go ahead and get them to little, maybe even no price. Yeah. And I think I've repeated them enough, but if you didn't catch some of the claims, that's why I think uniforms have significant advantages for students. It erases discrimination, provides a better environment for all the students, and it instills discipline. Thank you.
All right, I think that you have an interesting way of introducing the topic. Audience surveys become problematic as an attention device when you have lots of speakers, because probably 3 or 4 people have done it in front of you, and everybody's sick of having to participate. So it's one of those drawbacks of doing that. However, it worked okay here because you identified what the topic was pretty clearly. At the beginning, you've got a very clear statement of your claim. You've got an excellent layout of what the secondary points are going to be. So organizationally, everything sounds solid. Also, you do a good job labeling internally, although I think you need to have a little bit more transition material as you're moving from one point to the next. It just sounds sort of mechanical at times. Well, my next idea is, that sort of thing. So I think it could be a little bit smoother there. The problem that I have is that on most of the points, when there is evidence, it's background information, and it doesn't always advance the claim that you're presenting on that particular point. So, for instance, when you're talking about improving the environment of the school, either kids focusing more on school or being better behaved, I should get some data on that, and I don't. All I get is numbers on the number of schools that are using these kinds of uniform policies. If we've got 20% of the schools using those uniform policies, we ought to be able to have some data that compares the users of uniforms versus the non-school uniform schools on issues of frequency of discipline issues or changes in grades or decreased opportunities for bullying or any of those kinds of things, and we don't have any data like that. So it's very hard to support your inferences with the data you present. Like I said, I think you've got some good sources for some data, but most of the data is background information as opposed to something that's advancing the claim. And that seems to be where the weakness is, because that's kind of true on all of the points that you're presenting. At the end, you sort of apologize for repeating your argument again. Part of the problem here is that you don't have any information to summarize to make your argument. You just have the claims to repeat, and it does sound like it's coming up again pretty quickly because the speech was kind of brief. You do a nice job talking to the audience, though. I think that you come across very effectively, and that helps your credibility, but you need to have some data to help your credibility as well. All right. Merci.